Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show, it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of Mayor of Kingstown. A great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, I'm going to go ahead and jump in and say, the ending didn't surprise me with, not ending, but Mitch ended up dead. Didn't surprise me. Downside of having watched the trailer, because I already going into it knew that Mike becomes mayor, or at least was mayor based on things in the trailer. So the moment they're introducing Mitch as a mayor, I'm like, oh, at some point he's going to get it and Mike is going to he's going to get popped and Mike is going to take over. Didn't expect those circumstances to be how it all went down, but I kind of already knew that. Just once again, just a byproduct of watching the trailer and kind of piecing that together. Because at first I was like, wait, are you both like the mayor? But it's like, no, he's the mayor. Because that's the thing, too. I went into, I talked about it, too. I was confused about what role they necessarily play. Because I was wondering, I knew they were in the midst of all this criminal stuff, but I was wondering if they were kind of like Blue Bloods, whether they were like it was supposed to be kind of like Blue Bloods, where it's a family of cops. I thought this was like a family of dirty cops. It's like, no, it seems like Kyle is the only one who's actually a cop. Mike is an ex-con. And I never really found out what Mitch was before all this. But it turns out this whole operation of balancing everything is actually something their dad invented. And it's just kind of been passed between them. Their mom has nothing to do with it. It's just something that's been passed down the torch. It's mainly Mitch's thing. I don't think either it was like Mitch and Mike's thing, or it was just Mitch's thing. And that he always had Mike kind of be his right hand operator in all this. Kyle is involved tangentially, but essentially it's this ecosystem of I can never properly describe it, but I think the description of the show does. They're brokers. They basically broker the piece of this town. What was it like? There was 7 prisons in a 50-mile radius of each other or something like that. It was probably even a smaller radius. It might even been a 10-mile radius. This might have been what they said. But it's there's a whole bunch of prisons around. There's 20,000 people locked up, 40,000 people to guard them. The fact of the matter, these are people with no hope or no future, disconnected from the outside world, and we're there for them. We see it at the beginning, the whole thing with the tennis ball. Well, we get an explanation for that later on, because it's we see the guard look at it, keep walking, because it's right, I know what that's supposed to be. So it's this ecosystem of everyone keeping, it's like a checks and balance of they act as the brokers who set deals between keeping the peace between the different, the criminal groups on the inside, the ones on the outside, as well as the guards. Because, this is a town that people call home. There's a whole bunch of people who don't call this home, but they're still here regardless. So this ecosystem of helping people. The reason why this all kind of went sideways is because Mitch took a job from Vera, who was doing it on behalf of her husband Milo. So she needed him to find we never actually found out I don't know if they ever talked about what the actual money was for. I guess it was just retrieving something he had buried. And so the guy that was there, I think his name's Alberto, I think we ended up finding out. I guess he became obsessed with Vera. Because it seems like he already had his prints in the system, so I don't know whether he was a serial rapist or something like that. But he stalked Vera, followed her home, after the lap dances and everything. I thought something was going to go down at the club, but he followed her home, raped and strangled her, and you're just Jesus. And then he found the map, and he's because I guess Mitch didn't help him out. So he was but he's doing you a favor. Because whatever the situation is, he had no idea about Milo or the money. He just, she just happened to be the wrong person at the right time type of thing of you just happen to be someone he became obsessed with. And that's when his prints were all in his system and he did what he did. I feel like he was probably sadly a serial rapist or something, and just Vera ended up being a victim, and that led to him being this money, and he knows that Mitch and him are connected to this, so he probably assumed that's probably why he was waiting in Mitch's office, because he's how'd you know they'd have the money? It's he knew that she was doing the job. It's Mitch is doing something for you, he got this money, so most likely he's already gotten it because there's a map. So either he went there and tracked it down and found out, it's already gone. So he's let me go to Mitch's place. And he was waiting for Mitch. And Mitch was even hey, go ahead. He's you're being super agreeable. It's yeah, I wouldn't die for my money. I sure as hell ain't going to die for someone else's money. And it's because you don't know who you're messing with. But the guy didn't care. He was just well, whose money it doesn't matter. They're not going to find out it was me. And he kills Mitch. Granted, you didn't, I guess he didn't really think this through about who could have come after him, because it's right, he wasn't some criminal genius. His prints were all over Vera's place, so they were easily able to track him down. And once again, not realizing like how powerful this is, especially because the cops are indebted to like Mitch and everything. Like, because we saw him earlier, like talking to the cops up. It's like, hey, and like he's joking with them and stuff like that. Like he pulls strings for not just the criminals but the cops too. But then again, you know, once again, like certain things will paint cops as like cops can be seen as like through certain people's lenses. Cops can be seen as a gang of their own, you know. It's just like a game that has the law on its side, you know? You can understand why, from certain lenses and certain walks of life, you can understand why people might have that certain view, that certain lens of the police. But I think you almost see it in this episode, too, because it's like, the guy's like, oh, don't worry, we got you, Mike. We're going to meet, as Albert, hey, pick up that gun. No, not by the barrel. You've watched too many movies. Pick by the handle. Now point it towards the ceiling. I thought he was going to have him pull off a shot. It's like, no. Now point it towards us, and then they light him up. And it's like, cool. They needed an excuse to, like, kill him, like, with his hand on the gun and everything. It's like, cool. Like, we got the setup already set up. It's like, yeah, the fact is, but they're doing this for Mitch. So it's not, it's crossing the line, but it's like, he's a piece of crap. But it's like, you know, justification like that is like, yeah, completely throw due process out the window. Who cares, right? So... this ain't one of going to be those, like, law-abiding type of shows. You already know what just the nature of everything. Like, once again, it's a equilibrium, coexistent habitat type of situation of, like, we're all in this cage that is Kingstown together. Let's try and get along. Let's not go feasting after each other, you know. Predator and prey, like, coexist and just, those on the inside, those on the outside. But, like, it seemed like he was doing that on his own. Like I said, I guess, like, Mitch didn't help him out for whatever he was trying to do. Or the very, like, whether Alberto did that on his own, whether he got, like, because obviously, like, Milo sends one of his boys to find out. It's like, oh, so where's the money? And it's like, it's in police lockup. Oh, can you get it? He's like, no. And the guy's like, oh, that's going to be a problem. And then, like, Mike smashes a beer across his face, slams him into the thing, and pulls out a gun on him. Is like, first, the dude killed Milo's wife, then found the map, and then killed my brother. So, the thing is, the agreement is everyone knows not to go after Mitch, and he was off limits. Everyone knows that. So, that's not on me. And if Milo has a problem, it's like, then he can talk to me, because he's like, yo, like, we've done a lot for you, and I'm the type of guy that can take it all away in an afternoon. Don't ever threaten me again, you know? So, and that's the thing too, despite all this powerful position and, like none of these people were like Mitch's friends, but he shook a lot of hands. He knew a lot of people. Despite that, the power, the position, people knowing not to mess with you, this still ended up happening. Hell, even Kyle was like, yeah, I thought, like, he's like, I knew something like this was going to happen. There was only one way this was going to end. He was actually saying, like, though I thought it was going to be you. I guess because Mitch was the actual mayor, it's like, right, he had the protection, like, Mike wasn't. So, like, yeah, you don't have the same, you working with the mayor doesn't have the same weight as you being the mayor. Because that was a whole conversation, too, like, Alberto had with Vera. It's like, oh, so why do they call him the mayor? It's like, oh, because he runs things. It's like, what does the actual mayor have to say about that? It's like, oh, he already knows. It's like, yeah, this is how this thing works. Like, people in power know how things run in Kingstown, and it's like everything kind of goes through. I'm sure they've taken advantage of that. Even the mayor and some of the police have all used probably like Mitch and Mike to get things done. It's interesting too, like, because of how tied they're all to that. I mean, maybe that's why they're tied to the criminal world, because we have their mom, Miriam, she teaches a class to prisoners, because I guess I don't think about that a lot, about like, yeah, there are classes in prisons and stuff like that. I guess just to never think about that. I thought was interesting too, the parallel, the story she was telling about the dogs, about how like dogs aren't just like, like they're, because she was telling the story of, I think it was specifically a Cherokee tribe. And I believe, and she was saying that basically for them, it's like dogs aren't just hunting companions or protectors for the family, because people will have like one, sometimes even 2 or 3 dogs to like their respective families. And it's like, because dogs are also spiritual guides and, representations of like their ancestors. So, but when people came, like, and the dogs were separate, the dogs were so trying to get back to their families that they ended up jumping in the water, like 3,000 dogs drowning. You're like, that's depressing on its own. And then you hear the story about the strongest one that tried to keep going, and they tried to egg it on, but eventually it ran out of breath and energy, and it drowned. And, you know, it brought those people to their knees because they wept, because these aren't just companions. Like, they symbolize so much more to them, and they had to watch them die such a horrific way. And it's especially because they were just trying to get back to them. So it's like hard to tell that story and that parallel, you know, because even the prisoners, like, you can tell like that story was shaking them to their cores. And just then, like, obviously she was like, someone, hey, Miriam, can I talk to you for a little bit out here? Like, she knew something was up, because I guess she could tell the look on her face of like, right, the only time you'd come to me something like this if something happened, because she knew it was an invention. It was actually just not eventual. It was inevitable that this was going to happen. And I think one way or another, she was thinking. But I just think like just her getting that news at the time of her finishing the story, like, you know, so. It's so crazy too, because like earlier you had like Bunny and his guys like pulling up on Mike, because it's like you had that whole thing with Tim's nephew, like that, like if Tim hadn't done what he did, because it's like, yeah, stuff was already being handled, but Tim's nephew wasn't in the loop about what was going on, because he sent a letter to someone on the outside, but now it's like, cool, like we don't know whether that was like a sanctioned thing, but it's going to look bad. So Tim went to Mike about like, yo, potentially helping out with this. So they went to Bunny, and it's like, right, we'll get the letter, we'll get some drugs inside of the prison for you, so we'll strike a deal. Which even Bunny brought up. It's like, it's interesting, you up here helping everyone else making money, but you guys aren't. Like, that's what he didn't make any. And which Mike's mom talks about that later on, but regardless, I love that Bunny was just kind of like, yo, he was asking for something. The guy was just kind of like, oh, like a snow cone or whatever. And he was like, what do you want me to get one of those? It's like from 7-Eleven. He's like, you mean a slushie? If you want a snow cone, you got to go there. Or I could get you a Blizzard from the Q. He's like, I don't care. Just get me something cold. And he's like, yeah, fruit flavor too. So I love that. But it was like, once again, these people aren't your friends. They're just, there is some mutual understanding, because obviously Kyle isn't copacetic with all this too. Like, he gets dragged in this from time to time, because he's like, right, my wife ain't too happy about me taking like a last minute shift, like an hour before our reservations to like a dinner or something. So it seems like she's in the know, because like Miriam was there, and it was like, oh, you're doing it? If you get taking a shift last second, it must be because of your brothers. And be careful. He's like, why would you say that? And she's like, because if it's something related to your brothers, I might as well tell you to be careful. It's like, yeah. I guess for him, it's like, it's because it's almost like a, wait, what do you know that I don't know? You up here telling me to be careful. But I think it's also maybe a thing of like, why would you do that? Like, you telling me to be careful is kind of jinxing it a little bit, I think. But yeah, like, Tim's nephew, and the way he made that situation, he beat the crap out of that inmate, and then he was like, oh yeah, help, I'm down, and like, he made it seem like the guy was on top of him, which the guy snapped out of it and then started beating the crap out of him, so it just fed his story more. Granted, Tim and home dude weren't too happy about it. It's like, man, things went sideways, because brain swelling and stuff like that, cracked ribs. It's like, it all looks good from the other perspective, because it's like, right, the head guy was like, their captain or whatever was like, yeah, like, distance is like, you never, like, if you ever felt like you were in a position where like you were kind of being threatened or something, you should have immediately called for backup. Not even like your baton is supposed to be your last resort. He's like, do you know what your first resort is? He's like, pepper spray? He's like, no, distance. You know, so that went sideways, and that's what made Bunny react the way he did, because that particular guy was his cousin. And so he was just like, right, I'm sorry I pulled a gun on you and everything. And I love that guy was like, oh, he's got my gun. It's like, well, go get it. And then, like, just as Mike is leaving, driving away, he's like, there your gun go. Go get it. Still go after it. So that's why Mike had the gun on him at the time. So, and it just shows you also, like, how fragile this ecosystem works. Because, like, if people aren't in talks, like, if they probably did let Tim know ahead of time, like, Tim's nephew ahead of time, like, what was going on, he wouldn't have done what he did. And that could have, like, already led to things kind of exploding. But things are already, like, because that's the thing, with the mayor being gone, there is a power vacuum there. Like, that role, if they don't take it, someone else will fill that role. And you rather it be someone of their ilk than anyone else. Because, like, someone else could do a lot of damage with, like, that power and position. Which I even love their mom being like, she's like, I can understand why your brother did it. Mitch, I loved him, but he was arrogant and lazy. What he did, like, this ain't some altruism to it. Like, this isn't for the greater good. Because you think, like, you're trying to make it seem like what you do is noble. It's not. Like, the only reason why you try to pretend like it's noble is because you don't make a lot of money off of it. But it doesn't take away, like, what you're getting mixed up into, who you're being partners to, what hands you're shaking, what babies you're kissing type of situation. That's a really, like, I know that's like the presidential thing, but like, it is that thing of like, yeah, you're like forming all these relationships with people, but it's like, yeah, the moment like stuff goes sideways and it's not a perfect system. Cause you're even saying like, eventually it's all going to fall apart. It's not going to matter anyway. Like, this ain't some perfect system that is going to keep going forever. Cause she's like, eventually, like, I always figured it was going to happen this way, like to you or to your brother, like it did, or even to you, like, cause for her, it's like, what bewilders her is like, despite everything, you are here. Like, she's like, you being here, I don't get why. You don't like this place. You don't have any friends. Like, what keeps you here? And he was like, I can't leave. She's like, yes, you can, Michael. Just go. And that is the thing, like, what keeps him in this town? Because I guess, because he talked a little bit about it earlier with Kyle when they were talking about the bears and stuff like that, which is like, Kyle's kind of telling him to stop being so, like, overdramatic about it, which he later on does see a bear. But he kind of leaves it alone. It's just like all those worries and concerns he had, and lo and behold. But I think it's just the nature of, maybe he does feel like he's doing a service, that he is helping people. So it's like, I'm not trying to pretend like I am a hero, but this is what we do. There is some validity to, like, there is good in what we do. We do keep the peace. We do keep the balance. Maybe it is some self-centered need to actually be powerful, to feel powerful. Maybe that's not where it will start off at, you know, good intentions, road in hell and all that, you know? So maybe it wasn't just arrogance and laziness, and maybe it wasn't just his obsession with power, that maybe Mitch kept this up because he thought it was good. Maybe Mike's in the same position, because initially he was going to leave, like his mom was suggesting, but someone came to him begging, because it's like, without you, like, so I was told, like, you're the next mayor, and he was like, no, I'm not. I don't know, I guess everyone, maybe, like, that's just the rumor circulating that Mike's picking up where Mitch left off. I guess just because I love that scene at the bar with Milo's guy. I love that everyone was looking, and then everyone went back to their business, because it's like, that's Mike. Yeah, because probably by then word had already gotten out about Mitch, so like they were like, yeah, let him do what he do. Like, they already had like run of the land anyway. Mike already did anyway, but I think like probably after the recent events, probably like, nah, I'm like, oh, whatever he wants to do, we let him do. We kind of mind our own damn business. Like, everybody knows what's what in that town. I'm curious if that Milo thing's going to go away. Probably not. Are we going to like see more of him or not? I'm sure. I think just based on opening credits, I'm assuming we're going to see more with Bunny. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see where things going to go. There was another episode, but I'm watching these one at a time, so I'll watch the next episode after this. I'm kind of getting to this all late, so like I don't know when this is. I'm going to try and get both of them up today. They're going to be up like 15 minutes apart from each other. So, but I'm really excited to see what the next episode has in store for us with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.